Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table and this behind the scenes series. So last week we talked all about the real truths and what it took to go from being arrested 3 times to being a multimillionaire. And this week I'm taking you behind the scenes to talk about how I have managed building my family, relationships, marriage, all of the things people associated as I have grown and changed and evolved and had a lot more moving pieces added to my life. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. I so appreciate the outreach, the messages, the confirmation and validation of like, you spoke to my soul today, or I really needed that message. I really needed that episode. I also appreciate the questions that you guys send me. And of course, I really appreciate anytime you share the podcast because this is so important to be able to make sure that I am in more people's ears and truly helping them to develop the lives they want alongside the business success that they have built. So let's get into it today. And full transparency, I think that relationships and managing relationships is one of the hardest things to do as an entrepreneur. I've often said that the 2 hardest paths are parenting and entrepreneurship. And so for those of us that are mom business owners, we actively chose 2 of the hardest paths. Also, 2 of the most rewarding, which is definitely not a coincidence because most things that challenge us are also the things that change us for the better, right? So let's talk about how I have balanced my changes and my growth and balance that with being able to do what I love with the people that I love in all areas. So once I changed, one of the biggest lessons that I have learned about managing relationships alongside business is that not every relationship is meant to be forever. And as somebody who really cares about people, sometimes to a fault, I wanted to hold on to everybody, regardless of how much I had changed or what season I was in or where I was going. And this is one of those things that we hold a lot of guilt around as women, to where we are afraid to be honest about the things that we have outgrown, whether that is a intimate relationship, a marriage, a friendship, a certain environment. We don't want to upset anybody else, and we don't want to portray or for people to think that we are better than anyone. And so one of the things that really held me back was, my ambition is something that really was fueled as soon as I got a taste of helping other people. It was like something unlocked inside of me when I started working with people in personal training, that I was like, oh my gosh, I have the power and the ability to make people's lives better. This is addicting, right? And so my ambition has always been fueled by helping and caring for others. And so that has continued as I've grown. And it has also made me question or evaluate certain relationships in which there was not what felt like equal parts, or it was not a collaborative relationship. I tend to be a giver, a person who carries a lot of wisdom, a person who truly wants to see people make the best choices for them and for their lives. And so with that, what I would become resentful of is if I am trying to help somebody that doesn't want to help themselves. So my ambition has always been fueled by helping others. And it showed up early on, when I started to change my trajectory in my life. And what I realized is that I was so fueled by my version of success, which is helping as many people as possible and helping people on a deeper level, that the people that I felt like I couldn't bring value to, which was my own perception, were people that those relationships weren't nurtured. And I think that evaluation of what am I giving in this relationship? What am I receiving in this relationship? And what are the unmet expectations that maybe I'm not communicating in this relationship were questions that I started to ask, and really just looking at our relationships. Because I think that a lot of times we just accept what is right in front of us, and acceptance is great when it comes to us wrestling with certain challenges. But acceptance when it comes to our potential and what we're capable of and what we deserve can be something that keeps us stuck. And so for me, my ambition continued to evolve over time to where there were periods of time that personal relationships would go almost ignored, because my perception was, well, I want to spend time in relationship and conversation with people that I can actively help. And so if I didn't feel like I was bringing anything to the table, it didn't seem like it was good enough. I have since learned that like what you bring to the table and your value is not just determined by you, because there are things that people in my friendships and other personal relationships see in me that I don't see in myself, which is the case for anybody, right? And so my ambition has continued to evolve from going like to I can only focus on the relationships in which I am playing a part in their transformation, to I need to have different types of relationships that honor the different parts of myself, right? I need to have people that can also be a safe space for me. I need to have people that I can be fun and be silly and be super sarcastic with. I need to have people that I can have deeper level growth conversations with. I need to have people that just bring, a different way of thinking. And so trying to like find this all in one person can be really challenging. And so just making peace with like, number one, not everybody has the ambition that I have, and that doesn't make them less than or more than, right? It just makes them different. And finding acceptance and peace around that, because a lot of times, especially in entrepreneurship, we're fed this message of, who you interact with determines everything. And while I do believe like the majority of people that you spend your time with and the environments that you put yourself in are incredibly important, I don't think you should not be friends with somebody just because they're not an entrepreneur. I think that there's a different level of understanding and different viewpoints that people have. And I think that we don't ever want to be closed-minded. And so I would say the start of my success and turning things around and really diving into entrepreneurship, I was so focused on not leaving people behind that I didn't think about the types of relationships that I needed. And then later on, I became so focused on only aligning myself with people that I felt like I could help that I wasn't seeing the bigger picture. And so I became closed-minded. And both of those things have now transferred into this really beautiful, holistic view of I do have those different people in my life that play different roles and fill different buckets, if you will. And then a lot of people that fill multiple buckets. And so really it's just been the learning of managing relationships from a place of open-mindedness, being very clear and intentional in who I spend my time with and why I'm spending time with that person. And also having the understanding that not everything has to be about the business. Everything doesn't have to be networking. Everything doesn't have to be $1 million deal. Everything doesn't have to be about just like striving towards goals, and I can still be really ambitious. And so for me, it's really been almost like swinging from one extreme to another and then finding that middle ground of building relationships that fulfill both people in the relationship. And I feel like that's the best place that you can be. And I would say along the way of this whole path, I've had to learn so much about boundaries, and especially after having kids and understanding the different seasons, right? And so I am still in a season where I have little kids, and my kids aren't going to be little forever. and my business is really important to me, and my professional success is really important to me. And if I had to choose between being present for my kids or having a successful business, I would choose being present for my kids. And that's because I feel like, going back to what I said in the first episode, if you get to the end of your days, there was actually this study that was done. I cannot remember who did it. I feel like it might have been in an Adam Grant book, but don't quote me on that. But long story short, it was really about, they interviewed a number of people who were, I believe, like on their deathbeds or close to it, right? And asked them about what they wish they would have done differently. And the percentage of people that said, I wish I would have spent more time with my family, was huge. And literally not a single person said they wish they would have worked more. And so I think that really offers some perspective, because as we get older, our perspective changes. We see what's really important. This is why a lot of clients come to me when it's like, okay, they have kids, they've been in the business for a while. They're really realizing like they've done the whole hustle and grind thing. And now they're like, oh shit, okay, I want to keep this. Like, I built something successful. I want to keep it. I don't want to lose it. But also, like, I need to breathe, and I need to be able to like take vacations and turn off and like be with my husband and all of those things. And so I think it's just really important that boundaries are something that I had to learn, especially having kids and being in a season of like, what are my priorities right now? And do I have boundaries that protect those priorities? So one of the most valuable things that I've learned is boundaries are not to filter people out. And I think our perspective of like, if I set this boundary, like, whose feelings is that going to hurt? Like, who am I going to make mad? That's the wrong way of thinking. Boundaries are more for protection. Boundaries protect your time. Boundaries protect your energy. Boundaries protect your priorities and align you with your values. Boundaries are the thing. Never have I ever had a client that we didn't work on their boundaries, because it's hard. It's hard because you want to do all the things for the business and you want to do all the things for your kids. And as much as we don't have to choose like success or being a present mother, we do have to choose moment by moment of like, where is my focus right now in this present moment? And how do I organize my time and my priorities? So a lot of times it looked like, for me, and still looks like, my timeline might be a little longer. I might have to miss out on some things, and I get to choose what those things are. But the lie that we're told is like, if we do miss out, that there will never be another opportunity. And I truly don't believe that, because what is meant for us will be for us. And so what I've learned is that, and what I really want you to know about relationships and being able to maintain a higher level of success and have healthy relationships, is to have healthy relationships, to have business success and have these healthy relationships. We have to have really good boundaries. And so figuring out where in your life you're not currently setting boundaries, right? To where it's like, if you're so afraid of, if you're still operating from a scarcity mindset, or you're still so afraid of like losing what you've built, then you're going to be more likely to say yes to everything that comes your way. You're going to be more likely to put more calls on your calendar. And so I did all of those things, right? To where it's like, I remember taking client calls after my kids would go to bed. And so then that was running into my time with my husband. And each of these little shifts that I've made along the way, like these small tweaks that have equated to just these big changes, have been really scary, right? And so I had to learn the hard way, which now I get to teach my clients not to do, that these boundaries are set to protect your time and your energy and to actually create a pathway to the goals that you have. And once I learned that and I grasped that, to where I'm like, oh, okay, so if I want to have a really healthy marriage, because my marriage is a top priority for me, I'm married to my best friend and I want to keep it that way. And having the level of respect and friendship and communication that we have requires time. And it's a time that we can tell ourselves that we don't have, but really it's like, well, what are you spending your time doing? Because your time and how you spend your time is up to you. And so learning that the hard way of like, well, I'm the one that's putting this stuff on my calendar. I'm the one that's saying yes to these things. So this is my fault. If I feel disconnected in my relationships, this is my fault. So if I were to do anything differently, it would be to make sure that I'm setting things up in my business to really capture the long-term view and goals that I have. It's never too soon to be clear in your expectations. It's never too soon to set a boundary that, again, protects your values or your time. And so along the way, as we're talking about relationships and marriage specifically, and friendships too, there are certain ways that I had to learn to communicate and certain things that I put in place to be able to honor my relationships. So that has been things like intentional time with each of my kids, because especially having 3 kids, like 3 kids is a lot of kids. I have clients and friends that have more than 3 kids. And I'm like, that's so many kids. That's so many kids. So 3 kids, like having intentional time with each kid, right? Even if it's just like reading a book with them by themselves, that can be really hard, but it's something that's important, right? And it's something that they really cherish. And so, especially as my kids are getting older, my oldest Cameron is almost 9, and then Brooklyn is 6, almost 7 this summer. And so I get to take them to do like cool stuff, even like running errands with me. And so just really, again, it's all about intentionality. And so the flow of things essentially is like, what do you want your relationships to look like? And what do you want them to feel like? And then once you get clear on that, then you have to ask yourself, what is it going to take to build that? And so for me, it's like, well, I'm going to have to spend time, right, with each of these people that is important to me. And so what is that time going to look like? And where is it going to go? And actually like putting boundaries around that time to where it's like, no, I'm not going to go to that event this weekend because I traveled this week. And so I need to be home with my family, right? And so we need some sort of compass. And that's what I had to develop. And once you have that compass, it becomes easier to communicate. To where now even my friends are like, hey, there's this thing. I know this is usually your family time, but just wanted to see, like, people know because I'm clear about it, and people know like where my values are and where my priorities are. And so the thing about communication that is so important is that you do communicate. At the end of the day, most of the problems that I find in people's businesses, with their teams, and with their relationships are always associated with communication and the clarity around communication. And just a side note, Eric, my husband, and I did a whole marriage series where we walk through like exactly what we do to keep our marriage like top tier and stay best friends and make sure we're on the same page and also have businesses and 3 kids. So if you haven't listened to that, that's another series that you could head back and listen to after this one. So communication is the primary goal. If you're not communicating, if you're closing yourself off, you need to figure out why you're not communicating. So anytime that I would not communicate, be that my needs or just communication in general, it would be because I was burnt out. It would be because I was drained. It would be because I've given so much of myself to other people and not enough to myself. And so figuring out, what are you not communicating? What are the expectations that you have? Again, just like really going back to, what are your goals for your relationships? Where are they missing the mark right now? And what is missing the mark? What are you contributing to that is making it miss the mark or not meeting the standards or expectations that you have? And then not accepting that as enough, right? Your marriage and your children are things that should be priority. And as much as we could tell ourselves like, oh, this is a temporary busy situation, it's not very cool to just expect that your partner stand back and is like, okay, maybe she doesn't pay attention to me for a few years while she's building this, and then she will. Because the reality of that is you're just perpetually rewiring your brain and going through that neural pathway time and time again of like, this is who you are, this is your identity, which is where my clients end up, to where it's like your business is your identity. So just remembering that the most important thing about communication is that you do communicate. It's that you share your feelings. It's that you make space and time to connect. It's removing distractions. So one of the biggest communication things that has really like not only saved our marriage, but continued to keep us on the same page is having a weekly check-in. So we literally sit down and ask 2 to 3 questions to each other. Most of the time it's 2 questions of simply, what do you want me to do more of? Or what do you want me to do less of? And like, how did I do this week? Something around those areas is something, those are 2 things that we discuss to where it gives us an open opportunity to say, hey, I really need you to show up here. And the other person gets to be like, hey, I really need you to show up here. Or, hey, I didn't like when you did this, I would like you to do this. Or, hey, I love when you do that. I want you to do more of that. So we give an opportunity for like recognition, which really makes each other feel good about like, I love that you did that. That was really helpful. And then an opportunity, not for critiques, but like, we should be challenging each other to grow, to hold each other to a certain standard. And so these conversations will, go off into bigger conversations and goals conversations, but it really creates, again, this safe space for us. And so having and cultivating the safe space to have that type of communication in your relationships will actively change everything, because you don't feel like you're doing it alone. There is not a single day that I have that I'm like, man, this feels like it all falls on my shoulders. Every single day I'm like, man, I am so thankful for my support system. I'm so thankful that I have this person for this and this person for this, and that I have these people that are willing to do this thing with me. And so just remembering that communication is the key. Communication is the key to making sure that your relationships are solid. If a relationship does not feel good, there is something that you are not communicating or asking for. And so it has to come back to you, and you ask yourself, be this in your business or in personal relationships, what can you do better? What expectations are you not clearly communicating? And how are you going to communicate those? And this support system truly impacts every single area of your life. And so essentially the flow is this, and how I've been able to cultivate the relationships that I have that are so fulfilling is this. I am very clear on what my goals are and what my priorities are. I'm very clear on what my values are. Everything is built from there. From that, then I start to say, okay, where am I either not meeting my standards? Where am I not aligned with my values? And how can I fix that? And then you basically break everything down. So for your relationships, it's like, I want to have the best marriage to where it is a safe space. We travel together, we laugh, we have time for each other. Then right there, how are you turning that into an intentional action, an intentional aligned action that becomes a time block on your calendar where you don't take meetings because that is your time with your partner, right? And so I think that a lot of times we get stuck, and I noticed that I would get stuck a lot of, there was recognition around things not feeling the way that I wanted them to, but it wasn't pulled into an aligned action to change it. And so what I want you to take from today is, what actions do you need to take in order to make sure your relationships feel the way that you want them to? So define, how do I want my relationships to feel? Why do they not feel that way? What can I do to help them feel that way? And what actions do I need to take to protect that time or energy? And what communication do I need to give to be able to make that happen? I think a lot of times we'd be surprised at the way people are willing to step up if we ask them to. And so I would say that as a takeaway, I have learned so much about who I need to be around, what different types of people serve different parts of my heart, and how to filter out, based upon the season that I'm in, what is highest priority. And then also, I would say, beyond the communication, being kind to yourself is in understanding that you don't have to have a million friends and you don't have to do a million things for a million people. It's okay for you to focus on the people in your house first and then to focus on the people outside of your house after that. That is what keeps a lot of peace in my life, to know that if my foundation is good, then outside of that will be good too. But if my foundation, my home, feels disconnected and broken, outside of that will too. And there's nothing outside of that could repair the foundational pieces. So I hope this has given you some things to think about for your relationships. I hope that you take this into consideration as you look at the people closest to you, and remember that a thought, a text, a phone call, highlighting really just clear and direct communication to people can solve so much for us. Get clear on what you want, get clear on what's important to you, and get clear on how you want that to look with the people directly in your life. And if you're struggling with how to do this and how to pull it all together because you are just overwhelmed with so much going on, we will, of course, put the links in the show notes for you to connect with me further, apply to work together, and you and I can have a call and talk through where you are and where you want to be. Thank you for listening. And next week, we're talking about how I spend my time and my energy, and a real look behind the scenes at my schedule and how I make all the things fit. So we will talk to you guys next week.